we were going to avoid this video because honestly a lot of it's still up in the air, but people have been reaching out and asking us for our take on the NAR settlement. So we're gonna hop into that. A quick disclaimer before we say anything. A lot of this still hasn't shaken out, and we're gonna throw in some opinions in there that aren't necessarily fact. So take this for entertainment purposes only. So first things first, can you give me just an overview of what the settlement is about?
So there was a class action lawsuit filed against some companies, real estate companies, and NAR, which stands for National Association of Realtors, basically accusing of price fixing, which is not allowed. We're supposed to be able to negotiate. Sellers and buyers are able to negotiate. Surprisingly, it's been a lot longer than we all think going on, and finally has come to a settlement.
Yeah, when did this start? Like 2019 or something?
A long time ago. And it's just been sitting out there, and honestly, most of us were going, it's ridiculous, it's always been negotiable. We didn't think this would get airtime.
Yeah.
But now NAR, and it's a proposed settlement, has settled with these companies and on this suit with $418 million in settlement fees and 2 specific changes in the way we do business. One, the multiple listing service where everybody finds their information on homes that are listed has always advertised if a seller was cooperating with a buyer's agent, a listing agent cooperating with a buyer's agent to pay the buyer's agent's commission. That's always been able to be seen on the MLS.
So just
no longer.
Just to clarify, so like if I'm representing a buyer and I'm on the MLS and every house that I see, I can see, oh, this person is putting up 3% commission. Oh, this person is putting up 2.5% commission. Oh, this person isn't putting up a buyer's commission. Oh, like you can put whatever you want in there. Whatever's negotiated, is that true? But on the MLS, it's transparent what is being paid to the buyer's side.
That's correct.
Okay. And that's no longer going to be a thing starting July.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And so agents, and I think one of the things, the reasons they don't want that posted is because then agents would supposedly steer people to the better commissions. Anyway.
Well, you've got great ethics, but there's probably some shady people out there that maybe.
I know. Well, anyway, and then the third thing that's a fact is that a buyer's broker's agreement, BBA, will be mandatory. For a buyer, when they use a real estate professional, you will have a signed agreement.
So really beyond that, maybe there's a few things, but beyond that, a lot of it's still sort of getting shaken out. So we don't have a ton more detail. So now this is where we're gonna get into just basically like unknowns. We're gonna word vomit onto you guys basically what's on top of our mind, what could be happening, and take all this with a grain of salt. But I think there's 2 paths that this could end up leading to. And one would be that fundamentally nothing changes except you have to sign a little bit more paperwork. And as a buyer, you still get free representation, and then the seller has to pay the buyer's commission, and that's up for negotiation on how much that is. And the reason that has worked, like we were going through Reddit and kind of looking at sort of disputes and people complaining about this or disagreeing with it, blah, 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 blah. Like someone in a specific example said, I sold a house and I had to pay $40,000 in closing costs and real estate fees. And he's like, I feel like I got robbed, but half of that he didn't have to pay when he bought the house. So the only difference is now we're splitting the transactions, where before it's like when you're buying a house, you get representation for free, and who that helps is really the small people.
And I hate to say it's not really for free. I mean, the buyer doesn't have to pay it because the seller typically does. But so the buyer's agent wasn't free. I don't like, anyway.
As a buyer, the way it was set up was you didn't have to pay. And I think the reason that worked really well, and there's been stuff throughout history, you can look at, like in the 50s, they changed 15-year mortgages to 30-year mortgages because we needed to get stimulation in people buying houses. The one thing in my opinion, the one thing this is really gonna screw is anybody that doesn't have plenty of cash, which is mostly young people, first-time home buyers, stuff like that. I'm getting ahead of myself. So this could go two ways. Like fundamentally, nothing necessarily changes except you sign a little bit more paperwork just to make it more litigation. There's more layers of freaking paperwork to sign before you do a transaction. Well, I mean, it's just whatever. It's the lawyers at the end of the day that, like, our whole society has built up this paper callus that we have to sign everything a million times before we do anything. And the reality is the lawyer is going to probably get like 50% of this settlement, and we don't know the numbers. The main lead plaintiff, the person that put in the lawsuit, is probably going to get a nice little chunk. And then everybody else is going to get like a $15 paycheck in 3 years when all the dust settles. So the only person here that's making money is the two people that
I know, but we don't want to get into that discussion
Whatever.
about other people's professions.
Well, whatever, right? And lawyers do the same thing with their commissions. They take even more.
There's
way more predatory. It's 33%.
There's plenty of.
You see all those billboards? Dan Newland got me
There's plenty.
$950,000, but we actually settled for $4 million. He just took the rest of it.
Ouch. Anyway, but there's plenty of other professions that are commission based. So we don't know where that's going to shake out. That's to be seen. But we do know the value of a buyer's agent and a seller's agent.
I'll try not to get too off path. But so one direction it goes, nothing really fundamentally changes except for the amount of paperwork you have to pay. Who that would benefit is, again, like first-time home buyers, people without a lot of cash, people that are rich, or big companies like BlackRock or whatever. They're not going to be necessarily affected by that. But if it doesn't change, again, if you don't have a ton of money, you've been putting money in your pocket, so you have that down payment, and then you got to pay a real estate commission or represent yourself, especially as a first-time home buyer. That's just bad news. Anyways,
or if you're traveling across country to try and buy in an area you've never been to.
You pay. I kind of got lost. It shakes out, right? I mean, it shakes out. So like if I am a first-time home buyer and I've been working my little buns off trying to save up $20,000 for a down payment on a house, and I've got a dog and a wife, and we're gonna have a kid once I get a house, and yada 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 yada, and then when I buy that house, I don't have to pay for a buyer's commission, but then when I sell that house 10 years down the line, I pay a little bit more for the buyer's commission. It's like it shakes out. You pay for it on one end of the transaction and not on the other. And the reason that structure is even helped in the first place is because it allows people that don't necessarily have a ton of money to get represented when making one of the biggest transactions they'll make in their entire life without paying for it up front. And it's why is a buyer important. We can talk about that later, and you've even got a cool little cheat sheet.
And I'd like to attach that so people can sort of see the 105 reasons to use a buyer's agent.
Yeah.
Because that'll be thoughts.
That's the way it's worked. I think it works kind of good, but it also creates some sort of monopolistic situations where, like, if you don't put your house up for sale with a buyer's commission on it, you're not going to get nearly the amount of traffic on it as if you just did a for sale by owner situation. Right? That's why for sale by owners typically don't work, is because they're not willing to pay a buyer's agent who represent all the buyers. Now, again, this is all controversial because some people are like, screw them, you don't need buyer's agents, you can represent yourself. And then we'll get to that sheet at the end. It's like, I genuinely think there's a ton of value on that buyer's side. But anyways, two paths. It may not change really, except you got to send some more paperwork. Or the other path is sort of dramatic change. Maybe it lands somewhere in the middle, But if I'm a seller's agent and I come to you and I say, hey, I want to sell your house, and I know you talk to another seller's agent, but I don't put buyer's commission on there, so your fees will be half with me. And you'll still get the same amount of traffic because it won't be shown on the MLS or any of these large platforms, so buyers agents won't have the incentive to not bring their buyers here. And then we can negotiate that on the after term. So then if that environment gets created and you start to see buyer's commission disappear off of the agreements, off of the seller's agreements that are getting signed, it'll get a little bit interesting, right? Because then that buyer's agent agreement is basically going to say, hey, you're on the horn for my commission if the seller's not willing to pay for it. Okay. So then if that happens, who benefits and who loses? So the seller won't have to pay nearly as much.
It can still be negotiated into it.
It still can be negotiated into it.
Doesn't matter if they offer it or not. It can always be negotiated. You just need a great agent that knows how to negotiate.
That is true. And also the environment that you're in, right? Like right now we were just talking about it, is very much so transitioning from that crazy seller's market into a buyer's market. Now is a time where you have the opportunity to negotiate as a buyer. If you are a seller and you're way overpriced and your house is half as nice as the one next door up for sale, you're going to start seeing price cuts on it. People have unrealistic expectations. So as this transitions into a buyer's market, that commission is way more likely to get negotiated or whatever. But in the market that we were previously in a few years ago, where it was seller's market all day, they could put a picture up of the Google Earth lot and say, there's a house here, I promise, $5 million, and we're going to get multiple offers.
So I'm just going to quickly interject to what you just spoke about. Is people think all of a sudden prices are going to drop because of this, but
that's BS.
Prices have not been set because of commission rates. They've been set because of market conditions.
Yeah, that's perfect. How do you figure out the price of a home? That's a great question.
You go out on the MLS or our ability to see whoever sold whatever, and you get comps. Appraisers do the same thing. So you get comparable sales. We don't know which commissions
And it's based off of what sells.
What sells.
Not what's for sale.
No. And then, so exactly, the sold price is what sold with comparable homes. So you don't put just a group of homes in and say, oh gosh, look at this drop. It is important to note that if there's a lot more inventory, if inventory builds, it becomes that buyer's
Those
market.
comparable homes start to ladder themselves down.
And then Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you're going, oh, I've got a choice of this house, this house, this house, and they're going to pay the agent's commissions because we can call and find out, right? They're not, they are. I like to see all three, and then you've got knowledge. Knowledge is power. If you decide that one that's not selling.
And then I don't have to pay out of pocket for the agent if I am working with an agent with these two houses.
Exactly. But you might decide, but the seller's not going to pay on the house that I absolutely love.
I'll pay the buyer's agent.
Then you're going to pay the buyer's agent. But the buyer's agent still is negotiating on that house. And I'm surmising, in my opinion, you will still be very comfortable with the transaction for one of the most important things that you're going to do is buy a house. Those aren't just.
It's just gotten a little bit more complicated too.
It just. I think it's actually a good thing. I think it's much more transparent. Our agents can talk to it better and talk about areas they'll show. You'll have some responsibility too to be sort of loyal to your agent. So if you're going into a FSBO or going to go to a builder, that you'll speak to them about it. It's transparency and honesty with all of us. I think it's a beautiful thing.
Awesome. Well, and on the very dramatic side of it, that like it won't necessarily like what kind of market would? Like if it's just a crazy like buyer's market or crazy seller's market,
like COVID,
and buyer like
when everything
COVID.
There's no inventory, and the moment something came on the market, there were 30 buyers trying to get it.
Right. that buyer's commission is gonna really go away, which is crazy because that's when like having a good buyer's agent was the most important time to have one.
Yeah.
But that's the type of environment where you're gonna see like, oh, I don't necessarily need to pay any buyer's commission because why would I?
Well, we'll see. Because the why would you is the whole reason we're so important anyway. There are so many different aspects. Don't get yawny.
I'm not
like
yawning.
I'm vomiting.
Am I?
There's so many different aspects of needing a professional agent in an area you're unfamiliar with. You don't know much about houses. You need inspections. There's all kinds of things. Not everybody, but it's always been that way. It's always been negotiable. There's plenty of people that haven't
Well, and
used agents.
how it pertains to, most of our the people watching this channel have purchased a house before. So really the biggest thing we offer you guys as agents offer is like extensive nuanced knowledge about specifically the 55 plus communities. And that's a hard thing to really, we're trying to do a good job of like showing it off, but there's still, it's such a daunting task if you don't have like, if you don't have a solid understanding of the whole thing.
And most of you guys haven't bought a house in 30 years, right? And then now you're going into an HOA community that there's different nuances. So there's
so
a
many
lot
nuances.
of value.
Yeah, there's tons of value. There's a lot to it, and it's like it would be impossible to necessarily know. But if that changes, that value still exists. So the question is then how does that get dished out? It's like if I was selling bread, that bread is worth $5, but like if people changed the way they purchased bread or something, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like the value's still there. The question is becoming like how that's getting paid is changing. And we're not exactly sure how that'll look on a dramatic side. Again, the two splits, like it could literally not change.
Well,
Except
I think
you sign a little bit more paperwork.
to be honest, and I'll tell you from a real estate professional's standpoint, I don't think much is going to change. That's my opinion. What we were afraid of, and we still don't know about VA loans, what we were afraid of is that, and you mentioned a first-time home buyer that needs the seller to put in closing costs because they don't have this cash. Now they have to pay an agent and closing costs, and Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, your big lenders, don't allow a certain amount to be contributed by the seller. Now, they just announced this yesterday because we were afraid, oh gosh, what happens to the buyer's agent commission if it's put into that maximum amount? They're going to separate it. If a buyer's agent is using a Fannie Mae loan and they ask the seller to pay for the buyer's agent's commission and some closing costs, the buyer's agent's commission will not be part of that max amount. That's huge.
That help veterans out?
So VA loans, the VA lender will not allow a VA buyer to pay commission to their agent. The seller has to if they accept a VA loan. We're hoping that the VA, and I don't know, I'm not a lender, I don't know how that whole thing works. We're just hoping they follow suit to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and decide that it's okay if the buyer negotiates the seller to pay the commission.
What a bunch of bull. You know who's getting is all the small guys. Once again, the small people are getting
I'm glad you're saying
and the
that,
big guys like BlackRock and Zillow is going to shake out fine. They're going to figure out a way. This lawyer is going to walk away with $200 million. And then yet again, we're adding more layers of bureaucracy to the world we live in. How come no pools have diving boards anymore? It's because of guys like this filing freaking class action lawsuits where
Maya.
they get tons of money.
I'm sorry, Maya.
And they live in nice gated golf course communities. They cost $200,000 a year to freaking be a member of. And they have giant houses and tons of cars, and no diving boards exist in personal home pools anymore. Right? It's the same thing. These guys, they're scum of the earth, and they're ruining the entire nation.
So anyway, I think the media out there has really hyped this up, and there's been very divided, and it's not so. So we would appreciate any comments on what you think. He's worked up over the whole thing.
And this is the end of Explore, because we're commission based. So we will no longer be making videos for you guys. If it goes to no commission, so the way that Explore works is we get a little chunk by creating content, referring those people to my mom's, my beautiful mother's brokerage, and then when you guys actually purchase a house, we get a little referral, a little commission, which is fantastic. So then we take that money and we can make videos and we can go show off communities and we can go do all this stuff that we're
closing.
doing.
So we don't ask anything up front from anybody.
From nobody.
And so you guys, actually, this is an interesting point. If we're transparent now with the buyer on how everything's paid, we'll be transparent on how we get paid. We
have already been transparent. We've said that in videos in the past. We haven't kept anything a secret.
No, we've been pretty good at it.
But now, depending on where this shakes out, this will be the end of Explore 55 Plus.
No, stop. He's so dramatic.
Because of these guys. I'm telling you, who's the lawyer on this? We should put his face up there.
Maybe some lawyers are necessary. No, and some are good. I know we've created...
Maybe a couple of them.
We've created this world. That's the problem.
Who's we?
You know...
They have.
America. You know, in England, if you use...
Do they have diving boards in England?
If you use counsel...
Yeah.
And you lose, you pay everybody's fees.
Genius.
I know.
God, that's so genius. Why do we not do that?
So nobody...
Also, do they have diving boards in England?
I don't know.
I want to move to wherever they have personal diving boards on homes still. That's got to be a beautiful world.
It's interesting. We know you've got some opinions out there. We'd love to see.
Yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah.
In the meantime, if you guys are still interested in purchasing a 55 plus home in the state of Florida, we would absolutely love to be that resource. If you guys visit our website, you can get connected with the agents that specialize in these areas, in these 55 plus communities. Or of course, you can always just give us a call, email us. Anything else?
No, but we sure appreciate you still watching.
We do appreciate you guys watching very
Sorry
much.
Sorry for the distances. Do you want to tell them about your listing channel?
No, it's okay.
No, okay.
They find it.
Well, you're done. We're done. You
can cut that was a little like, oh, maybe if you guys figure it out. Anyways, us little guys, we got to stick together. These big guys keep screwing us over. I'm sick of it. Have a good one.